remarkable events of World War I, if not all of military history. Of course, a lot has changed since that time. Today, soldiers kill at great distances, often with the push of a button or from a computer screen with an unmanned drone. Even when soldiers come face to face, their languages, their cultures are so diverse as to make this type of communication unlikely. The letter that I'm reading to you from a soldier who's writing home. Perhaps we shouldn't expect to see another Christmas truce, yet what happened on that Christmas of 1914 may still inspire peacemakers of today. For now, as always, the best time to make peace is long before armies go to war. Christmas Day, 1914. My dear sister Janet, it is 2 o'clock in the morning. Most of our men are asleep in their dugouts, yet I could not sleep myself before writing to you of the wonderful events of Christmas Eve. In truth, what happened seems almost like a fairy tale. If I hadn't been through it myself, I would have scarce believed it. Just imagine while you and the family sang Christmas carols back home before the fire, I did the same with enemy soldiers here on the battlefield. As I wrote before, there has been little serious fighting of late. The first battles of the war left so many dead that both sides have held back until replacements could come from home. So we mostly stayed in our trenches and waited. Oh, the rain. It has fallen almost daily. Of course, it collects right in our trenches where we must bail it out with pots and pans, and with the rain comes mud a good foot or more deep, splattering and caking everything and constantly sucking at our boots. Through all this, we couldn't help feeling curious about the German soldiers across the way. After all, they faced the same dangers we did and slogged about in the same muck. What's more, their trench was only 50 yards from ours, and between us lay no man's land, bordered on both sides by barbed wire, yet they were close enough that sometimes we could hear their voices. Just yesterday morning, Christmas Eve day, we had our first good freeze. Cold as we were, we welcomed it because at least the mud froze solid. Everything was tinged white with frost, while the bright sun shone over all perfect Christmas weather. During the day, there was little shelling or rifle fire from either side. And as darkness fell on our Christmas Eve, the shooting stopped entirely. So I went to the dugout to rest. And lying on my cot, I must have fallen asleep. All at once, my friend John was shaking me, saying, "Come and see what the Germans are doing." I grabbed my rifle, stumbled out of the trench, and stuck my head cautiously above the sandbags. I never hoped to see a stranger more lovelier sight. Clusters of tiny lights were shining all along the German line as far as the eye could see. "What is it?" I asked in bewilderment. And John answered, "Christmas trees." And so it was. The Germans had placed Christmas trees in front of their trenches, lit by candle or lantern like beacons of hope. And then we heard their voices raised in song. Stille Nacht, Heilige Nacht. And this carol may be unfamiliar to us, but John knew it and translated, "Silent night, holy night, all is come, all is bright." When the song finished, the men in our trenches applauded. Yes, soldiers applauding Germans. And then one of our own men started singing, and we all joined in the first Noel the angel did sing. In truth, we didn't sound nearly as good as the Germans with their fine harmonies, but they responded with enthusiastic applause of their own and began another, O Tannenbaum. Then we replied, O come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. And they joined in singing the same words in Latin, soldiers harmonizing across no man's land. I would have thought nothing could be more amazing. But what came next was more so. English, come over. We heard one of them shout. You know shoot? We know shoot. There in the trenches, we looked at each other in bewilderment, and then one of us shouted jokingly, you come over here. To our astonishment, we saw two figures rise from the trench, climb over their barbed wire, and advance across no man's land unprotected. And one of them called, send officer to talk. I saw one of our men lift his rifle to the ready, and no doubt others did the same, but our captain cried out, hold your fire. Then he climbed out and went to meet the Germans halfway. We heard them talking, and a few minutes later, the captain came back with a German cigar in his mouth. We've agreed that there will be no shooting before midnight tomorrow. Across the way, we could make out groups of 2 or 3 men starting out of the trenches, coming toward us, and then some of us were climbing out too. And minutes more, there were hundreds of us in no man's land, soldiers and officers alike, shaking hands with men we had been trying to kill just moments before. Before long, a bonfire was built. Newspapers changed hands. The Germans howled with laughter at ours. They assured us that France was finished and Russia nearly beaten too. We told them that was nonsense, and one of them said, well, you believe your newspapers and we'll believe ours. Clearly they are lied to. Yet, after meeting these men, I wonder how truthful our own newspapers have been. These are not the savage barbarians we've read so much about. They are men with homes and families, hopes and fears, principles, and yes, love of country. In other words, men like ourselves. Why are we led to believe otherwise? As it grew late, a few more songs were traded around the fire, and then all joined in, for I'm not lying to you, old Lang Syne. Then we parted with a promise to meet again. I was just starting back to the trench when an older German grabbed my arm. My God, he said, why can't we have peace and go home? He looked at me and I said, you must ask that of your emperor. And then he said to me, perhaps, my friend, we should ask our hearts. And so, dear sister, tell me, has there ever been such a Christmas Eve in all of history? For the fighting here, of course, this means very little. Decent fellows these soldiers may be, but they follow orders. We do the same. Besides, we are here to stop their army and send it home, and we could never shirk from that duty. Still, one cannot help imagine what would happen if the spirit shown here were caught by the nations of the world. course, disputes must always arise. But what if our leaders were to offer well wishes instead of warnings, songs instead of slurs? Would not all war end at once? All nations say they want peace, yet on this Christmas morning, I wonder if we want it quite enough.